Ever since the day that I watched Back to the Future Part 2 for the first time, I've always been fascinated by the idea of flying cars. I mean, flying cars, flying around, you're not on the ground, being suspended in the air, driving.
Holy cow.
It sounds crazy, right? Well, not so much. In recent years, many companies have been talking about adopting a technology or service to actually implement flying cars into society. And while many of these things have failed to materialize, none of them have been more prevalent than that of Uber Elevate. This was supposed to be a network of taxi cabs that would be floating above the ground, using eVTOLs. Now, what's an eVTOL, I hear you ask? Electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, otherwise known as eVTOLs, were a network of taxi cabs purported by Uber and announced at the Uber Elevate Summit in 2016. Because why not, right? I mean, who wouldn't want a network of flying taxi cabs that were projected to start commercial operations in 2023, and seeing that it's now 2023, I thought to myself, hey, if I can't order an Uber Elevate now, and I want to know why, I'm sure that other people will want to know why as well. With the initially targeted cities being Melbourne, Dallas, and Los Angeles, as you might have guessed, creating a fleet of electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles was no easy feat. And many of the cost predictions that were initially purported from Uber were highly speculative. But the goal was pretty simple. I mean, there's so many cars on the ground. What if we just had cars in the sky? That would alleviate ground congestion and would make things better, right? Well, not so much. And part of the issue here is not the fact that they wanted to create these eVTOLs, it's just that the implementation of a flying car network has never been something that is going to be easy. And just because you have the technology theoretically to create it, actual implementation is going to be hard. Not to mention the legislation alone would be a nightmare. Can you imagine politicians trying to decide what times of the day an eVTOL should be able to fly, how many should be able to fly in a specific zone, how many people should be picked up, what the maximum weight is, all of these conditions that are going to have to be satisfied before you can effectively roll this out. I think at that point, the cost associated and the time associated with implementing this network would be far more costly than that of just regular Uber cars. Now, granted, it is true that in the long run, they said that it was going to be catering to a specifically niche market. Niche means rich. Now, while an eVTOL isn't technically a flying car, we're basically talking about the same thing here. It's a vehicle that picks you up, flies to the sky, drops you off in one spot after it picks you up in another. But even if the eVTOLs weren't the initial challenge, the skyports definitely would be. I mean, if you've got a flying vehicle, you need a place where that flying vehicle can safely take off and safely land. And if you've ever worked with drones before, you would know how strict the regulation is on where you can fly your drone. This isn't the sort of thing you would get picked up in the middle of downtown and dropped off at your yoga studio or at your gym. No, this would be for a long distance journey. Even though it was a long shot for Uber, I think I would have loved to see a flying car network. I mean, how cool would that have been? But it seems we're just not there yet. Just 2 years before it was slated to roll out commercial operations, Uber announced that they would be selling Uber Elevate to Joby Aviation, a California-based aviation company that had already been in electric aviation for more than a decade. But I mean, it makes sense. Uber's decision to sell Uber Elevate was part of a broader decision to slim down the company to achieve profitability. And like every other company in the world, Uber was still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, and it seems that that recovery effort was more important than that of launching a fleet of flying cars. As part of the deal, Uber was going to be investing an additional $75 million on top of the initial $50 million that they invested as a part of the Series C financing round for Joby Aviation, raised back in January of 2020. But the hope may not be lost yet. Because of the investment by Uber, this brought the total funding for Joby Aviation to $820 million, bringing the total valuation for the entire company to $2.6 billion. So we might not have seen the last of flying cars yet. When we last left off, Uber and Joby Aviation said that they were going to be integrating the flying car service into each other's apps. And in the 3 years since, we haven't heard anything. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Josh. If you have ever wanted to fly in a flying car or have any thoughts on whether you think flying cars will be a thing in the future, let me know down in the comments below, because I'm skeptical, but I am hopeful. Till next time, guys, I'm Josh. See ya.